When I married Alison, I thought I had found the love of my life. For 10 years, we built what I thought was a strong, loving marriage. We had a house, 2 kids, and a life that seemed picture perfect. But it all came crashing down in one moment of betrayal, an act so devastating that it awakened a side of me I didn't know existed. It all started with a gut feeling. Alison had been acting strange for weeks. She was constantly on her phone, laughing at texts she wouldn't share, and suddenly had work meetings that kept her out late. When I asked her about it, she'd brush me off, calling me paranoid. But the signs were there: the late nights, the guarded phone, and the distant attitude. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going on. One evening, while she was in the shower, I did something I never done in a decade of marriage. I looked through her phone. What I found shattered me. Texts between her and a man named Ryan filled the screen. They weren't just flirty, they were explicit. Pictures, plans, and even a string of messages about how exciting their secret meetings were. My blood boiled as I scrolled through the evidence of her betrayal. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I decided to gather more information. I needed to know how deep this went. Over the next few days, I installed a GPS tracker in her car and used a voice recorder app to capture her conversations when I wasn't around. What I uncovered was worse than I imagined. She wasn't just sneaking off during her work meetings. She had taken Ryan to our home when I wasn't there, to our bed. That was the breaking point. I wasn't just angry, I was livid. It wasn't just betrayal, it was outright disrespect. I knew I had to act. Catching them in the act. One afternoon, when she told me she had another meeting, I followed her. The GPS tracker led me to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. I parked a block away and waited. After about an hour, I saw her car pull in. A few minutes later, Ryan showed up in a beat-up truck. My hands shook with rage, but I waited for the perfect moment. Once they were inside, I marched up to the door and knocked. It took everything in me not to kick the door down immediately. When the door opened, Ryan stood there, shirtless, his face frozen in shock. "Who the hell are you?" he stammered. "I'm her husband," I said, my voice cold and steady. Before he could react, I punched him square in the face, sending him sprawling onto the floor. Years of suppressed anger and betrayal boiled over as I let loose on him. I didn't stop to think, I just acted. A punch to his ribs, a knee to his stomach, and a kick to his legs. By the time I was done, he was groaning on the floor, clutching his side. Alison screamed, trying to pull me off him, but I turned to her with a glare that made her step back. "Don't you dare," I said. "You brought this on yourself." Ryan tried to get up, but I pointed a finger at him. "If you ever come near her, or my family, again, I'll finish what I started." He nodded, terrified, and scrambled to leave, limping out the door. Destroying her life. When Ryan was gone, I turned my attention to Alison. She was crying, trying to explain, but I didn't want to hear it. "You destroyed our marriage," I said. "Now it's my turn." I walked out and went straight to a lawyer. The next day, I filed for divorce and full custody of our kids. But I wasn't done. I sent copies of the texts and photos to her family, friends, and even her boss. Her reputation crumbled overnight. Her parents were furious, her friends distanced themselves, and she lost her job when her boss found out she'd been skipping work for her meetings. Alison tried to apologize, but I was done. "You made your choice," I told her. "Now you'll live with the consequences." The divorce was brutal, but I came out on top. I got custody of our kids and kept the house. She was left with nothing but regret. As for Ryan, I heard through the grapevine that he ended up in the hospital with a couple of broken ribs and a fractured wrist. Serves him right. Now, months later, I'm focused on rebuilding my life. My kids are my priority, and I'm doing my best to be the father they deserve. As for Alison, she's living with the fallout of her decisions. Her once perfect life is in shambles, and I don't feel a shred of sympathy. Betrayal has a way of revealing who people truly are. Alison showed me her true colors, and I made sure she faced the consequences. Some might say I went too far, but when someone destroys your trust and disrespects your family, you fight back. And I did.
My wife had an affair with my cousin, so I divorced her and started dating his wife. For years, I thought my life was perfect. I was married to Lisa, the woman I believed was my soulmate. We'd been together for 10 years and built a life filled with love, laughter, and trust, or so I thought. Everything came crashing down when I discovered her affair, and the betrayal cut even deeper when I learned who her secret lover was, my cousin, Jason. Jason and I had grown up together. We weren't just cousins, we were like brothers. From playing video games as kids to being each other's best men at our weddings, we shared everything. So, when I found out about their affair, it felt like a double betrayal, one that would ultimately change my life forever. The discovery. It all started when Lisa's behavior changed. She became distant, guarded, and unusually secretive about her phone. She claimed she was just stressed, but something didn't feel right. One evening, while she was in the shower, I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter. A text from Jason lit up the screen. The message was innocuous enough, something about last night, but it made my stomach churn. I unlocked her phone, and what I found destroyed me. There were weeks of texts between Lisa and Jason, filled with flirtation, explicit photos, and confessions of love. They had been sneaking around behind my back, meeting up while I was at work or family gatherings. I couldn't believe it. My wife and my cousin, two people I trusted most in the world, had betrayed me. Confrontation and divorce. I didn't confront Lisa immediately. Instead, I spent a few days gathering my thoughts and evidence. When I was ready, I sat her down and showed her the messages. She froze, her face turning pale. "I can explain," she stammered. "Don't," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You've already said enough in these messages." At first, she tried to justify her actions, blaming our lack of connection, and saying Jason was there for her when she felt neglected. But her excuses only fueled my anger. "This isn't about me," I snapped. "This is about your choices. And now you're going to face the consequences." I filed for divorce the next day. Lisa begged for forgiveness, but there was no coming back from this. An unexpected connection. The fallout from the affair tore our family apart. When Jason's wife, Emily, found out about the affair, she was as devastated as I was. We'd always gotten along at family events, but now, we found ourselves leaning on each other for support. What started as occasional phone calls and shared tears soon turned into something deeper. Emily and I bonded over our shared pain and betrayal. She was kind, compassionate, and funny in a way I hadn't fully appreciated before. One evening, after weeks of talking, we decided to meet for coffee. What was meant to be a simple conversation turned into hours of laughter and connection. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Moving on together. Emily and I began seeing each other more often, and our relationship quickly blossomed into something neither of us had expected. We helped each other heal, but more importantly, we found happiness together. Our relationship wasn't without its challenges. Family gatherings became awkward, to say the least. Jason and Lisa didn't take kindly to the fact that Emily and I were now dating, accusing us of being vindictive. But we didn't care. They had made their choices, and now we were making ours. Eventually, the family adjusted, or at least tolerated, our new relationship. Emily and I weren't interested in revenge, we were simply two people who had been broken by betrayal and found solace in each other. A happier future. Now, a year later, Emily and I are still together, and life feels brighter than it has in years. The betrayal that once tore me apart has become the foundation for a new chapter, one filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. As for Lisa and Jason, their relationship didn't last. I heard through the grapevine that the guilt and drama tore them apart. It's ironic, really. They destroyed 2 marriages for a fleeting affair, only to end up with nothing. Sometimes, life takes unexpected turns. What began as the darkest period of my life led me to someone who truly understands me. Emily and I may have found each other under painful circumstances, but our relationship is proof that even in heartbreak, there's hope for something beautiful.